In this digital world we're all living in, your data, your systems, that's basically your kingdom. So the big question is, how do you protect it? Well, today we're diving into security management. Think of it as the art of building a digital fortress, one that's designed to defend everything you hold valuable.
So how do you actually build this fortress? I mean, it's not as simple as just throwing up a single wall, right? No way. It's all about a smart strategy, a solid architecture, having active defenses, and, yeah, even having a plan for when the bad guys do get inside. So let's get into it. Let's break down the blueprint. All right, first things first. You can't build a great fortress without a solid foundation. It's just common sense. So before we even think about walls and guards and all that cool stuff, we've got to understand the basics, the why behind it all. Why does security matter so much in the first place?
Okay, so at its most basic level, what is security? It's really just the practice of protection. Simple as that. We're talking about defending against any threat that could mess with your operations. That could be anything from a hacker trying to swipe your data to a simple system failure that just takes you completely offline. The big goal here? It's to find and seal off those vulnerabilities before anyone gets a chance to exploit them. And this whole foundation of security really rests on three main pillars. You're going to hear this a lot, the CIA Triad. So first up, you've got confidentiality. Super simple. It's about keeping your secrets secret. Then there's integrity, which is all about making sure your data is trustworthy and hasn't been tampered with. And finally, availability. This one's crucial. It means you can actually get to your stuff when you need it. Now here's the tricky part. You have to balance all three. Sometimes if you crank up the confidentiality, you might hurt availability. It's a constant balancing act. And believe me, if just one of these pillars crumbles, your whole fortress is in big trouble.
Okay, so we've got our foundation poured and set. Now what? Well, now it's time to get out the blueprints. I mean, think about it. A fortress built without a plan is really just a messy pile of rocks, right? So let's talk about how to design our defenses the smart way.
And this is exactly where security policies come into play. These are, for all intents and purposes, the master blueprints for our fortress. These are the official documents that lay down all the rules. We're talking who can access what, when they can do it, and how they're allowed to do it. Everything we build from here on out, every single defense, has to line up with this central plan.
Now, policies are definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. You've got different types. There are the big, high-level organizational policies. Think of these as the laws of the entire kingdom, like making everyone change their password every 90 days. Then you get more granular with system-specific policies for your really critical stuff, like the super strict rules for who can touch the main database. And finally, you've got issue-specific policies that tackle one particular thing, like laying out the rules of the road for how employees can use the internet and email.
At the very heart of this whole blueprint is something called risk management. It all kicks off with identifying your assets. What are your crown jewels? What do you absolutely have to protect? Then you kind of have to put on your spy master hat. You start identifying potential threats and hunting for vulnerabilities, basically the weak spots in your walls. The really key part, though, is analyzing those risks. You have to figure out which threats are most likely and which would cause the most damage. Because let's be real, you can't fix everything at once. Once you've got that priority list, then you can start putting the right controls in place to shore up those defenses.
All right, so we've moved from the high-level blueprint to the actual architectural style of our fortress. This is where we get into our design philosophy. It's not just about what we're building anymore, but about how this whole thing is going to operate from the inside out.
So let's check out a couple of these architectural models that are all about data integrity. First, you've got the Biba model. Its whole purpose is to prevent data contamination. The main rule here is no read down. Imagine a high-ranking general. You don't want them making decisions based on faulty intelligence from a less trustworthy source, right? That's Biba. Then, on the other hand, you have the Clark-Wilson model. This one was really built with business in mind. It acts like a super strict accountant, making sure every transaction is well-formed. Basically, it's there to make sure no one can make unauthorized or improper changes that could mess up the company's books.
And here we have one of the coolest, most clever models out there, the Brewer-Nash model, sometimes called the Chinese wall. People call it the Cinderella of cybersecurity because it's all about transformation. Just picture this. You've got a consultant, and they're working with two companies that are direct competitors. The second they access some data for client A, bam, a virtual wall goes up and it dynamically blocks them from seeing anything related to client B. Their access rights literally transform based on what they just did. It's an amazing way to prevent any conflicts of interest, a truly adaptive defense.
Okay,
Let's recap. We've got our foundation, we've got our blueprint, we've even picked out our design philosophy. So now it's time for the fun part. It's time to actually build the defenses. We're talking the walls, the gates, the guards, all the things that will actively protect our fortress.
And these are the real workhorses, our key security mechanisms. Think of authentication as the guard standing at the main gate, checking everyone's ID. Access control is the system that decides which keys you get and which doors you can open. Then we've got encryption, which is like writing all our important messages in a secret code. Firewalls are the gatekeepers, inspecting every bit of traffic coming in and out. Intrusion detection systems, those are the watchmen on the walls, ready to sound the alarm at the first sign of trouble. And of course, antivirus, which is kind of like the castle's physician, always on the lookout for nasty infections and ready to fight them off.
You know, choosing the right tool for the job is absolutely critical. So let's zoom in on one of these for a second, encryption. You've basically got two main flavors. With symmetric encryption, use one single shared key to both lock and unlock the data. It's fast, it's simple. But then you have asymmetric encryption. Here, you've got a pair of keys. There's a public key that anyone can use to send you a locked message, but only you have the private key to unlock it. It's definitely more complex, but it's fantastic for secure communication when you can't easily share a secret key beforehand.
But let's be honest with ourselves. No fortress, no matter how well it's built, is ever truly impenetrable. So you have to plan for the what if. What's the plan for when a really determined attacker finally gets through the walls?
And that's where this comes in. This is your emergency playbook. It's called a Disaster Recovery Plan, or DRP. This is the formal, structured guide that tells you exactly how to get your IT infrastructure and operations back up and running after something bad happens. And that something bad could be a massive cyber attack, or it could be a fire or a flood. The real mental shift here is to stop thinking if a crisis will happen and start preparing for when it happens. Now, building one of these plans is a very deliberate process. You start with something called a business impact analysis to figure out what your most critical functions are, what can't you live without. From there, you look at potential disasters and develop your recovery strategy. Things like having good backups or even a whole separate site ready to go. Of course, you have to write it all down, but I'm going to tell you the single most important step is to test it. Test it and test it again, because a plan that you've never actually practiced, that's not a plan. It's just a piece of paper.
And that really brings us full circle to the final big question. Building a digital fortress isn't some one-and-done project. It's a constant, ongoing process of building, maintaining, and adapting to new threats. So I want you to take a hard look at your own defenses and really ask yourself, is my digital fortress built to last?
In this digital world we're all living in, your data, your systems,